Srila Rupa Goswami is explaining this process of spontaneous devotional service to be a natural and continuous evolution of consciousness. Artificially, nothing can be drilled. So the point is that our consciousness is absorbed in Krishna, and our faculties are being channelized to serve and please Krishna. That's the point. That one's chitta is absorbed in Krishna and one's activities are centered around pleasing Krishna. So if at different stages of devotional service, the same result is effected out by different tools, what is the problem or what is the loss? That's the point. So we see that actually, spiritual life requires a relationship. There is no doubt about that. For spiritual life to blossom. But we will see in the initial stage of Krishna consciousness, it is important to relate with those devotees. Example, whose practice of Krishna consciousness is in a similar setting to our practice, but depth of Krishna consciousness is more. So such devotees, so relationship with such devotees, that is what can help us actually. That's why the Vedic Shastras are talking about that, okay, that once, that is what the Vedic Shastras are talking about, that, okay, to practice devotional service, one should take initiation from a living guru. No past gurus, living guru, presently living guru. Why? Because one can at least strike a relationship, deeper relationship. Otherwise, it is going to become an immiscible story. So therefore, one needs some contemporary chords actually to strike some relationship. And unless this relationship is striking, then the source or the connectivity for inspiration doesn't come about so easily. That's the point. Then one may strike relationship, or then one may start liking the examples of the acharyas. In the examples of the acharyas, when they had their manifest lila in this world, because our acharyas have the roles in the spiritual world. But what we may be able to relate with is their struggles in this material world. And when these relationships are very uh, powerfully connected, then may come the question of meditating on the residents of the spiritual world. That's why Prabhupada is explaining that for a neophyte devotees like us, rather meditating on the residents of the spiritual world is going to be hazardous, because we will go in an illusory plane. Why illusory? Because connectivity is not there, so no current is flowing in the circuitry. And secondly, we just cannot relate with what happens in the spiritual world. What is the consciousness? How that consciousness channelizes. And because of that, the entire game is illusory. So whenever we hear some lofty principles, we should remind ourselves that we cannot squeeze spiritual advancement. So rather we should derive the lesson what we should derive. See, the lesson what we should derive here is a lesson of anugatya. As it is said, raga anuga. So anugatya. Anugatya means following. And let me very sincerely follow the example of the devotees of the Lord. That in whatever situation of life, we look up to the devotees. We remember our present acharyas. We remember Srila Prabhupada. Because we can relate to these struggles. So the point, you see, you try to see the point. The point is so beautiful here that even at this stage of Raganuga, there is spontaneous flow. So the flow of devotional service is spontaneous, but the relationship is Anuga. That means even devotees tending to be pure devotees, their consciousness is absorbed in, soaked in observing and learning from the eternal Nityasiddha associates of the Lord. They're not saying, oh, I am very advanced now. I have no material contamination now. So I will devise my own means how to give parental affection. You see the point? Even at that stage, their main focus is following. That's the idea. Like it is said, anyone who is developing or whose a prominent rasa which is developed in his heart is parental rasa, any such devotee would like to constantly meditate on the service of Nanda and Yashoda. That how Nanda and Yashoda serve, let me do the same thing, let me do the same thing. How their service is constantly going beyond its frontiers. That means constantly expanding. How their desire to serve is constantly expanding and increasing. Unbelievably. Yeah. So in bhakti, the consciousness to get rid of certain things is going to be a deadly consciousness. In bhakti, we don't get rid of anything. So if you see, so beautifully it is being pointed out that spontaneity is not at all independence. We should not catch things wrongly. Spontaneity is not at all independence. Spontaneity is full dependence. So what is spontaneity then? And that is the question being asked. ये spontaneity क्या है फिर? So one may say, okay, such a nice statement is made here that the spontaneous devotionals, they're not very rigid about the regulative principles and rules, and they do not follow rigidly rules. And one will say, very nice. Yeah, calm devotional service. And this is not very rigid about following rules and regulations. अब इतने साल तो morning program आ गए, not very rigid now. No, don't assume. Is it not? Spontaneous devotional service. What is spontaneous devotional service? So the whole point is this. Spontaneous devotional service is nothing different from, so basically it is nothing different from sadhana. Because in sadhana bhakti, we are having a clear-cut clarity of what to do. It is written down, it is published. You can just log on and connect and just as it is follow. So that is not a curse, that is actually a benediction. वही clearly बता दिया, कम से कम पता तो है करना क्या है. And if you do it, the taste will come. That's the point. तो spontaneous क्या होता है? Now spontaneous is nothing but spontaneous is just developed on the same pillar or the same trajectory. That means that many situations and case studies and many situations are very directly pointed out, and we follow that. That is what the sadhana bhakti. But then as it grows, then one will encounter many complex situations which are not listed in the Shastras. Each situation में क्या करें? So spontaneous means further extension and expansion of the regulative principles, nothing else. Just like in mundane studies, initially very simple problems are given. First it is shown how that formula only came. One does a derivation. Then it is shown that okay, how to solve simple problems. One formula of a desired output variable, which is a function of 6-7 input variables, and then the description of a situation is given. From that description, one attracts the values of the 7 input variables, put in the formula, get the output variable value. This is first done. Then things become intricate. Why? Because one has to then figure out, okay, in this situation, which value belongs to which parameter. It becomes very complex. Then one starts practicing examples and case studies there where the formula may not be directly applicable. So it may only be applicable, say, suppose if you take an infinitesimal section of the entire problem domain. So then you may have to do integral after that. Then only it may be applicable. Or it may only be applicable if in some way you break it into parts and then some way you start combining them again later. Then the formula may not domain fit wholly and partly also. So one may have to twist the formula, meditating on the derivation, and maybe give a small twist here and there, and then the formula may be applicable. So these kind of, complicated case studies or questions are not practiced in the first go. Is it not? Who will relish? Who can practice? One who has been soaked up very strongly. Is it not? So spontaneous devotional services like that. Just like in cooking, a neophyte is not encouraged to practice spontaneous cooking. It is going to be a holocaust. And the poor Seva Kunj devotees will be, poor fellows will have to bear a torture. Is it not? Why? Because one who is not acquainted with the principles of cooking, with the fundamentals of cooking, what spontaneous he can do? He has to do everything verbatim follow. Verbatim follow. not spontaneous, verbatim follow. Only a very advanced cook, he can play around. He can say, okay, he can simulate and meditate on a new recipe. Okay, let me make this recipe. This should have this kind of taste, that kind of taste. And then now he'll make his own recipe and try it out. Yeah. But he'll be successful because he knows what is successful, is it not? He is. Like you see, many times very small children, they are not asked to draw. You know, their drawing book is what? The pictures are already drawn, they just have to color it first. Because very small child, what this fellow will draw? What he will draw? You tell what a small child can draw. A 2-year-old child, 1.5-year-old child, what he can draw. If you tell him, okay, can you draw the scenery? You know? Just cannot, just try to imagine, you know. A 2-year-old child, you're telling him, okay, draw IIT building, you know. So that's the point, you know, it becomes a ridiculous affair. Is it not? So this is what we have to understand. So it's not that